Well, Hanukkah is a minor holiday in the Jewish calendar. It's happened after the whole Hebrew Bible was canonized, and it's the story of a people in Judea who were responding to religious oppression from the Syrian Greeks, and also the need to really push back against extreme assimilation. So I'll give you an example, is that the Syrian Greek leader at the time, Antiochus Epiphanes, he wanted to unite his kingdom. And one of the ways he wanted to do that was to make sure everybody was the same culturally. And that means Hellenism. He wanted people to all buy into the Hellenistic culture. And so he took over the temple in Jerusalem, and he picked his own high priest, as opposed to the Jewish people picking their own high priest. And he picked a high priest who was very assimilated into Hellenistic culture. And one of the things he had them do was sacrifice pigs on the altar. And if you know a little bit about Judaism, that's a no-no. And so people who were more traditional rebelled against that. So they really were rebelling against two things. They were rebelling against this oppression from the outside, but also against the fellow Jews whose assimilation into a Hellenistic culture was just far too much. Well, we live in America, and one of the things I pointed to people talk about the holiday season. Well, really, in the Jewish calendar, the holiday season's in the fall, when we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Simchat Torah. Those are our big fall holidays. So there's a fall holiday season and there's a winter holiday season. But I think it's because Christmas is so important to the Christian community, and Hanukkah sometimes falls during, often I should say, falls during this time of year. Though if you remember a few years ago, it was on Thanksgiving. So, you know, it's a holiday season, but it's really a very minor holiday in the Jewish calendar. But I'd say in America, it gets play. It's in relationship to Christian culture, right? So when there are a lot of Jewish people all around the world who live in areas of Christian culture, but when Jewish people lived in Muslim countries, Hanukkah, again, it's a minor holiday. There's no Muslim holiday that happens around this time, so it wouldn't get so much play. It certainly wouldn't start at Thanksgiving, and for some even at Halloween, right? But it's a nice holiday, and there's some nice traditions associated with it. There's the whole story about finding the oil after the temple was, after there was a victory against this oppressive force, the Syrian Greeks, and the temple was cleansed and rededicated. There's the story about finding one cruse of oil when there was a need to use that because you needed pure oil to rededicate the eternal light that was in the temple. And so it would take a long time to produce more of this pure oil, but the story of that miracle is that it lasted 8 days and not just the one day. Of course, you can hear the internal contradiction of the story, and I don't mean to bust anybody's bubble about this, but if you think about it, if it was supposed to last one day and it lasted 8 days, that's only a 7-day miracle, because one cruse of oil should last one day. So how come it's an 8-day miracle? It's only a 7-day miracle. So that's really just a story. And the story of focusing on the miracle and the oil, the rabbis wanted to move the story away from aggrandizing a victory, a war, because we don't like to celebrate war, even if it's a victory. It's not in Jewish practice to celebrate a war. But also the group that led that rebellion, led that fight against oppression, were called the Hasmoneans, or the Maccabees. And the Maccabees, while that particular generation were really, I would say, honest and good in what they were fighting for, within just 2 generations, the Hasmoneans became very corrupt. Their leadership became very corrupt. And so the rabbis were pretty disappointed, and so they didn't want to have the focus of the holiday be the Hasmoneans. So what they did is they shifted it to this story of the oil, and the hero is now a miracle, that you could attribute to God as opposed to people who were, corrupt. So power can do that to some people, and so the rabbis found a way to shift the story. And one of the things the Hasmoneans did that really showed that they had won this victory and gained independence is they minted their own coins. After all, you think about what does it mean to have your own country? You mint your own coins with your own pictures of your own leaders on it and your own symbols. And so they minted their own coins. And that's why one of the traditions on Hanukkah, a big tradition, is to give gelt, or coins. And that's really the gift of Hanukkah is gelt. Though my grandmother sometimes gives gelt, but that's just my own grandmother. But the idea of giving gelt, that's the traditional gift. And only in America, again, has that shifted where people give actual gifts. But the traditional thing is little coins. Growing up, I'm one of 5 boys. I know that my mom liked to give us little gifts along the way, and she would save some big surprise at the very end. We never knew what it was going to be, but it would definitely keep our interest each night to say, well, what's going to happen now? But I mean, one year I got a globe. It was a very school-oriented thing. Some practical things, but it's not really the gifts. I do remember as a kid, one time it was towards the very end, almost all of the candles were lit, and all of a sudden there was a blackout, almost exactly at the moment that we had finished lighting the candles. It was a big storm brewing in Connecticut, where I grew up, and I actually felt there was something special that just happened, because you just lit all these candles and the lights went out, but not those lights. And that was a nice little personal experience for me as a kid. Holidays are always a unifying force in the Jewish community, because that's when you come back. I mean, Thanksgiving is a unifying force for America. People come back and they reconnect. So I'd say that when you talk about the holidays that American Jewish people who want to identify Jewishly, I would say Hanukkah is one of those that they make a point of doing and celebrating and have a menorah. There are kids in college who, right before Hanukkah, they get a little package of candles sent to them by their parents or by their synagogue to make sure that even though they're at college, they can light candles. Or they'll go to the Hillel House, which is the University Jewish Union. That's at a lot of schools. Plus, there's good food associated with it because of the oil in the story. So anything cooked with oil is traditional to eat, like latkes. And then there's the big argument, applesauce or sour cream. That's a big debate. And then there's sufganiyot, which is now more of an Israeli custom that's come to America too. Sufganiyot are jelly donuts. They don't have to be filled with jelly. Sometimes they're filled with caramel. I mean, they're really good. So if you have food and you have something fun to do at home, it's more of a home observance. And Passover too, I would say, is one of those major home-based festivals, but that's biblical, that people make a point of doing it. It unifies them, their connection with their family, but also connection with their history and their culture. There's a great irony that Hanukkah was, as I said, a fight against assimilation. Jewish people who just went too far. And in America, Jewish people have found a way to assimilate into American society. For example, I'm wearing a yarmulke. There's a lot of people who wear yarmulkes that have sports teams logos on them, and that's perfectly fine. You know, you can have a Bruins logo, you could have a Red Sox logo. That's a combination where there's a Jewish symbol and a cultural symbol of the area, and they fit together. So I think that one of the things that Hanukkah is saying is we can fit into society, but then we want to maintain our uniqueness. We want to maintain our traditions. And if Hanukkah can remind people that we can do things to have our own unique flavor, but also be perfectly integrated into American society, then I think they're really doing honor to what Hanukkah is all about. we're having a program on Saturday night, December 16th. Anyone in the community is invited to come to it. We're going to have a dinner that will feature latkes. Again, you'll have that choice of different toppings. And then we have a few other special toppings like salsa. We're going to just kind of spice it up a little bit to have other things to put on your latke. And we're having an entertainer, a juggler, and he's also a comedian and a juggler. He's really great. And so it's just a time, 5:30 to 7:30, so young kids can come and they'll eat. And we'll just, everybody's going to bring their own Hanukah, that's the candelabra. They can bring that from home, and we'll have a big display of everybody's. So let's say that's from our family. I mean, some people will say this was my grandmother's, this was my great-grandparents' Hanukah, it's passed down. And they're proud to say that's ours. And they'll bring it here, and we'll light them all up and make sure the fire alarms are ready.